let's take a look at news stories making headlines around the globe. First off, we start with Nigeria having a new electoral law. The new Electoral Law Amendment Bill 2026 was signed by President Bola Tinubu at the Presidential Villa in Abuja after weeks of heated debates within lawmakers, CSOs and the public. The president says Nigerians must have confidence in the electoral system, but also warns that the country must confront its technical limitations, stressing the need to avoid glitches during elections. Speaking with newsmen after the ceremony, Senate President Godswill Akpabio and the Electoral Act 2026 amendment would ensure that every Nigerian's vote counted. Our State House correspondent Adesua Moran reports.
After weeks of deliberation and public scrutiny, Nigeria's Electoral Act has now been amended, reworked, and signed into law. At the ceremony, President Tinubu says he closely monitored the National Assembly's work while urging Nigerians to trust the system.
I followed keenly what you are doing. The essence of democracy is to have, very solid brainstorming discussions committed to national development and nation building, the stability of the nation. It's not as important as the history aspect of this. What is crucial is the fact that you manage the process to the extent there will be no confusion, no disenfranchisement of Nigerians, and that we are all going to see democracy flourish. It is time that we have confidence in our system.
It comes after both chambers of the National Assembly on Tuesday took a fresh look at the Electoral Act 2022 Repeal and Enactment Amendment Bill 2026 after several considerations in the last 2 weeks before finally passing the bill and transmitting same to the president for his assent. Tinubu says what matters most was preventing confusion or voter disenfranchisement.
No matter how good a system is, it's managed by the people, promoted by the people, and the result is finalized by the people. In fact, for final results, you are not going to be talking to the computer, you are going to be talking to human beings who will announce the final results.
Addressing the controversy around electronic transmission in real time, the president was clear that technology must not replace human accountability.
And when you look at the crux of various arguments, maybe Nigeria should question our broadband capability. How technically are we today? How technically will we be tomorrow to answer the call of either real time or no. And as long as you appear personally as a manual voter in any polling booth, but ballot paper is given to you manually, you decide in a corner and thumbprint the party of your choice, you cast your vote without hindrance and any interference. Ballots are subsequently counted manually, sorted and counted manually. It's just the arithmetic accuracy that is entered into from easy. It's the manual. Essentially, the transmission of that manual result is what we're looking at. And we need to avoid glitches. I'm glad you did. Interference, unnecessary hacking in this age of computer inquisitiveness, Nigeria will be there. We will flourish. We will continue to nurture this democracy for the fulfillment of our dream for prosperity and stability of our country. I thank all of you very much.
The Electoral Act amendment has been one of the most contentious legislative efforts in recent months. Civil society groups and opposition figures had pushed for a mandatory real-time electronic transmission of election results from polling units. Senate President Godswill Akpabio says the new provisions are historic, helping Nigerians detect any alterations of results after they leave the polling unit.
We took cognizance of the peculiarities of the country. We did not allow too much outside interference, and we're very patriotic in our submissions. And at the end, we believe strongly that what the president has just assented into Act of Parliament will make for a better election in the future, and will also lead to prosperity, and will also lead to transparency of the electoral process.
The Speaker of the House of Representatives acknowledges that the changes could shift the 2027 election timetable to January, but argues that the adjustments were made for greater good.
However, there is one area that I'm sure he forgot to mention, and that is the number of days notice, which was earlier in the 2022 Act, 360 days. Now we have seen the wisdom to reduce it to 300 days. And this will inadvertently translate to holding the presidential and National Assembly elections in January 2027. And that will technically avoid conducting election during month of Ramadan of 2027.
With presidential assent secured, attention now turns to the Independent National Electoral Commission, which must implement the new framework ahead of the 2027 elections. Adesua Omoruan, Arise News.
Thank you, Adesua. Well, the Independent National Electoral Commission, INEC, has said vote trading of any sort would not be tolerated during Saturday's area council election in Abuja. It has therefore mandated the Economic and Financial Crimes Commission and the Independent Corrupt Practices and Other Related Offences Commission, ICPC, to deploy their men to polling units for the Federal Capital Territory Area Council elections holding on Saturday. The electoral umpire added that any individual found buying or selling votes would be apprehended and dealt with in accordance with the law, insisting it would not tolerate vote trading. INEC Chairman Professor Josh Amokpiton stated this yesterday in Abuja at a stakeholders meeting ahead of the elections. Amokpiton pointed out that the FCT Area Council election remained the only local government election conducted by INEC. In other news, President Bola Tinubu has issued an executive order to safeguard and enhance oil and gas revenues for the Federation, curb wasteful spending, eliminate duplicative structures in the critical sector of the national economy, and redirect resources for the benefit of the Nigerian people. The President, according to a release issued by his advisor on information and strategy, Bayo Ononuga, signed the order in pursuance of Section 5 of the Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria as amended. In the same vein, it stated that the directive seeks to restore the constitutional revenue entitlements of the federal, state, and local governments, which were taken away in 2021 by the Petroleum Industry Act, PIA, explaining that the PIA created structural and legal channels through which substantial federation revenues are lost through deductions, sundry charges, and fees. Under the current PIA framework, NNPC retains 30% of the Federation's oil revenues as management fee on profit oil and profit gas derived from production sharing contracts, PSCs, profit sharing contracts, and risk service contracts. Coming to Lagos, the Police Care Initiative has concluded in Lagos, while the program continues for drivers across the state. The Lagos State Police Command has commended Governor Babajide Sanwo-Olu for approving free eye screenings, corrective glasses, substance abuse prevention, and Lagos State Drivers Institute training for officers. The Commissioner of Police, Olohundare Jimoh, described the initiative as timely, noting that although officers are healthy at recruitment, the demands of policing can strain their eyesight over time. He confirmed that 1,000 police personnel and their families were screened, received glasses and professional medical advice to maintain good eye health.
We are happy that today they've concluded the screening for 1,000 police personnel and that of their family to ensure that those who may have defective eyesight, maybe as a result of refractive error or as a result of stress that is accompanied by the hazard of the job, are corrected.
The result of the Dr. Governor Babajide Sanwo-Olu initiative on health is that our police officers are excited. They are excited in the sense that most of them are able to see clearly now from what they have said earlier. Some of them had complained on reading, sight, both day and night vision. So all thanks to our visionary leadership, Governor, the father of governors in the country, Governor Babajide Sanwo-Olu.
This has been my problem for a long time now. For over 7 months now, I detect this. But come today, come tomorrow, there is no way I can achieve it. But today, I achieve it with a platter of gold. I feel good. I feel happy. Don't you see that I am looking as if I am clamping a staircase? I'm happy.
I'm happy. It's good to see, our servicemen looking so good, policemen looking happy, excited at the fact that they've been able to be given another opportunity to see more clearly. But Rufai, I'm so sorry that I missed the opportunity for you to dance Kilewu for 30 minutes live on air. You had put a bet on the table that you would dance if the president does not assent to the bill. Now the act. But let's take the stories, let's divide, let's dissect, let's get into them this morning. Dr. Bati, good to see you. You're still in Abuja. We miss you here in Lagos. But please, your take on the stories this morning.
Good morning. Okay, first, let me start with the executive order. Good morning. The executive order that was signed by the president with regard to all oil revenue being paid directly into the Federation account. Well, the objective of that is to plug leakages, ensure greater efficiency for the benefit of the people of Nigeria. The president stressed in that executive order, and to ensure greater transparency in terms of revenues accruing and to protect the interests of the federal, state, and local governments of Nigeria. Money paid into the Federation account will go into the distributable pool under Section 162 of the Constitution. So in that regard, the interest of the three levels of government will have been taken care of. Now, the issue about NNPCL now is not going to get, almost 50% of what it gets. 30%, as running expenses, so to speak. And then an additional 20% also from PSCs and other contracts. Now, the MDGIF is also not going to get the percentage it gets from, the crude oil proceeds. Here is the question in that regard. How will these agencies now be funded? NNPCL is not covered under the budget framework of the federal government of Nigeria. Where then does that leave the NNPCL in terms of its operational expenses? Would the NNPCL now be covered under the budget? And with the budget and all the problems we'll be having with cash backing, that may in fact achieve the counterproductive objective of making it difficult for NNPCL to function smoothly. The same thing for the regulatory authorities in the oil and gas sector. Those regulatory authorities also are not covered within the Appropriation Act. So whatever money is available to them that have been set aside for them within the PIA will no longer go to them. The president has said that this new regime will start with effect from February 13, which means that the order is even backdated. Now, When will it end? What is the timeline that government is looking at? And also, we're told that the federal government has powers. Yes, there's no argument about that. Under Section 5, and also the fact that it's a federal government that has authority over minerals. But I thought that the suggestion that the PIA is going to be reviewed, that is where the federal government, in my view, should have started from. Yes, there are issues in the PIA, not even in terms of remittances, but also in terms of other details, community interests, funding for the various business. Maybe we should have started with reviewing the PIA, cleaning it up, involve the representatives of the people, that is the National Assembly, in the process, and then have an amended PIA before we start this process and take care of the interests of not just NNPCL, but also the regulatory agencies. The problem with the regulatory agencies is that if this order goes on for so long, it may in fact translate into corruption in the regulatory agencies, because the regulatory agencies will now have to depend more on the same people that they are supposed, or the same agencies, the same entities that they are supposed to regulate. So there are issues there to be reconsidered, in my view, even if it is to expedite action. As for the Lagos State government, kudos to the Lagos State government. I imagine that this free eye care for policemen in Lagos State, which ended yesterday, 1,000 persons benefited from that. And, well, it's exciting to see that some policemen are saying they are excited, they can see clearly now. Well, that's interesting, because some of our policemen sometimes, when they stop you, particularly those ones that check vehicle particulars, even when your particulars are complete, what they are seeing, they will say they have not seen it. In fact, they will even open your gloves compartment to be looking for what is already in their hands. Maybe now that they will see clearly, we will have better relations. And also, those ones that control traffic, sometimes, in fact, they contribute to traffic police. They even contribute to the congestion, because the driver is seeing something else. The man controlling traffic is also seeing another thing, just creating confusion and bottlenecks. And it is just as well that this same Lagos State government has done the same Sanwo-Olu Eye Care initiative for drivers. So with drivers seeing clearly and policemen seeing clearly, that will improve road travel in the city of Lagos, I want to assume. Finally, to the big elephant in the room, which is the Electoral Act 2026. That's the new title now that it has been signed. The president used such words as trust, as confidence, as efficient delivery. Now, this is the main expectation of Nigerians, that the elections in 2027 will be free, fair, and credible. However, the opposition parties are not happy with the speed with which the president has assented to what was previously a bill, now an act. And that's why the PDP is protesting, the ADC is protesting. The Senate president says everybody's fears have been accommodated. And the Speaker of the House says, well, the election will now most likely be in January or December. And so those who are complaining about fasting, either for Muslims or Christians, their fears have also been allayed. But I do not imagine, as I pointed out yesterday, that those who are opposed to sections of that act will stop making noise. Therefore, the responsibility, because the president also used the word responsibility, is on government, and particularly INEC, to ensure that they rebuild trust, they build confidence, those same words that the president used, and that the elections in 2027 are free, fair, and credible. That will be the major expectation of Nigerians. Anything to the contrary would, further controversialize the process. And President Tinubu should see a free and fair, credible election as his major legacy that he would love to be remembered by.
All right, thank you very much. Legacy talk this morning, Rufai.
Okay.
Could this administration, could President Bola Ahmed Tinubu leave a legacy of free, fair, credible elections for the Nigerian people? Your take on the stories this morning.
Anyway, I don't think President Tinubu will leave a legacy of free, credible election with this law that they've just signed. I think the law is shambolic, and when people speak up for their democracy, it's not noise. They're speaking up for the future, because when they see their country being eroded and people taking over the country, it is a very sad one. But let me give President Tinubu some kudos this morning before I hit him hard, like I will always do. As regards this executive order, President Tinubu scored a good one. Let's dial back historically. It was under President Obasanjo we started making these allowances for NNPC to retain funds here and there. And this was against Section 5, Section 44(3), and Section 162 of the Constitution. On this, federal government is the sole shareholder of the NNPC, so it can do as it pleases. And President Tinubu is totally spot on. And despite the fact that people try to wriggle themselves and force this NNPC retention in the PIA, does not make it right. So President Tinubu, on this, kudos to you. And for people that are arguing, where will NNPC get the funds to work with despite this? No! They still have 20% of the working capital funds, the profit from working capital there with them. They can use that to manage themselves. So on this, President Tinubu, you have done well. When you do well, I will say you have done well. On this, kudos to you. But what I would just say is, now that you are getting all this money to the federation account, you must be able to account for it too. It's not the one that you will not release money for budgets. It's not the one that Ministry of Health will have over 200 billion for capital expenditure. It's only 36 million you release it. And at the same time, you can release 500 million for some strategic communications in some people that are doing media spin for you. Or you can spend 150 million on an event, on health initiative, when you only release 36 million for, what is it called? For the CAPEX spending in the Ministry of Health. So it's not that when the money comes to the federation account, we'll not judiciously use it to service budgets. But on this, you are correct. Now, let me hit you hard, President Tinubu. This is an aberration to democracy. A president signed a bill in less than 24 hours. Did he go through the Attorney General? Did they read it? What bill did they even sign? You see, these are the questions, and that's why I'm sorry, we have a good as dead opposition in this country. If we had an opposition that is thriving, by this morning, they should be the one running around filing court cases. I think this opposition should go and even learn how to do opposition from the APC, because they don't look ready and organized to me. Who looked at the bill? Who vetted the bill? Did the president himself read the bill that he signed into law? Or they just rushed it for him? And that's why I knew this was going to happen. That's why I was daring you yesterday that if he doesn't, I will dance Kelewu. Have they gone through the prideful process? What did they harmonize? What is even in the bill as we speak today? What was signed? Because this is the same country, Ayo, that we've had discrepancies between what was signed and what was gazetted. Till today, the National Assembly, this same rubber stamp National Assembly, cannot account for the tax bill. They set up a committee since December. It's only if the committee will bring out their report tomorrow as regards the contradiction of what was gazetted or not gazetted. That's when we will know. The National Assembly is not serious. They are not serious. I don't consider them as serious. I don't consider them as representing the interests of people. They are rubber stamp. The National Assembly that sings on your mandate, we shall stand. I'm sure they were singing it to President Tinubu. On your mandate, we shall stand. Jagava. Is that on National Assembly? The last time we had National Assembly in recent time, probably maybe under Bukola Saraki. So we have not gone through all of that. Till today, are you sure INEC has even seen what the National Assembly passed? The INEC that is going to use the law. What we should focus on now is to look at the guidelines. What will account for the provisions around having no network? What will warrant an incident form? We don't know all of those things in the guidelines. The INEC presiding officer can still send the election results. Can we account for timestamp in the guidelines so that even if there's no network there, they can still send the results? President Tinubu is talking about glitch. He's talking about trust, talking about transparency in a law that does not account for the people, that does not respect the views of people, that they are calling noise. Isn't that hypocritical? We already know that they are going to be shenanigans. in this 2027 election. He's talking about glitch that only happened in the presidential election that favored him, that INEC has not been able to talk about till today. It's not only in the presidential election the technical glitch happened. Did it happen in the Senate and the House of Rep election that happened on that same day? So let's stop deceiving ourselves. Let's stop being hypocritical. Let's call a spade about this country, about the shenanigans that have happened. That's why we should weep for this country. And you know what hurts me the most? It's only people like us that are talking here. We don't have opposition. If we had opposition, they would have been filing court cases even about the procedures.
All right. I mean, I agree that the opposition parties have a role to play, but Rufai, I do believe also that this environment, this atmosphere has been very intolerant and not conducive for even the opposition to thrive. And that's why we continue to speak about an opposition, a viable opposition in a democracy that must work. It almost seems as if they've been gagged under this administration, and that doesn't speak very well for democracy to thrive in Nigeria. But let me speak about now that the president has assented to the Electoral Amendment Bill Now Act of 2026. What are some of the things that we should look at? Because whether we like it or not, and I'm glad that when we were speaking to Barrister Mike Igini yesterday, we were like, it's already been, the deed has been done. How do we then work forward from this? We have criticized the process. It's sad that despite the rising up of Nigerians, the public outcry, the civil society organizations, the Nigerians who were bold enough to come out and, great standing Nigerians to come out, we had Dr. Obieze Kwesili, we've had Professor Patutomi, we've had Mr. Olisagbakoba, a number of people come out to speak strongly, and the opposition parties against this particular bill, but nevertheless, it has been passed. So how do we move forward? How do we make it work? Because at the end of the day, we have the soul of a nation to save. This is the democracy that we have currently, and one way or the other, we have to be able to see how within the imperfect structure or system that some might describe it as, something has to happen. So what are some of the things I'll highlight this morning? Number one is that INEC must rise up. All eyes on INEC. Yes, there's a trust deficit between the people and INEC based on precedents, based on previous election cycles, based on the fact that till today, despite the cries and the calls for a report on the technical glitch or what happened, whether INEC or the people have not been able to give an explanation to the satisfaction of the Nigerian people. But we are still hopeful that INEC could do right by the Nigerian people by executing and prosecuting a free, fair and credible election. They now have the legislative framework to work with. Despite the limits of the framework, what has been said, the intent of the lawmakers, as you heard the Senate President say, is that, they've made provisions for transmission of results, only providing that there's network coverage. So can INEC give the people an opportunity to decide who they want as leaders in the next election? We don't want to see a complicity between INEC and the government because INEC is supposed to be independent. So can they ensure that they have within the remit of this law the opportunity to deliver the best election a Nigerian has seen under the post-military rule in the new democratic dispensation from 1999. Can we trust INEC on that level? Professor Josh Amupkito has come out to say that the FCT council elections this weekend will be free of vote buying. Now, some people said during the last elections that happened that the Anambra elections that he didn't have enough time. So this perhaps is the first true test as leader of INEC, having had enough time to settle into the job and see how we can actually have elections run. So this election this weekend is quite critical. It's important. Let's see to what extent they will transmit results or send results to the portal. Let's see to what extent he would back this tough stance on vote buying. Let's see to what extent they will prosecute criminals who are seen to flout some of them provisions of the law. So all eyes on INEC on this one. Can INEC do the job? We looked at the judiciary. Unfortunately, many people feel like Barrister Mike Igini spoke about that yesterday, that they failed the people. We looked to the legislature. A number of people feel like they failed the people. We looked to the executive. He assented. A number of people feel like they failed the people. Can we now look to INEC? Well, let's see what happens in the long term or in the short term. Then second of all is a critical point made by Barrister Mike Igini yesterday about the protection of INEC presiding officers at the polling booths. That based on the disgruntled nature of the fact that people feel that there might be now these glitches that would happen or network connectivity now disappears on the day, that the people might want to take laws into their own hands, and that the protection of these officers, who are many of them are NYSC young Nigerians, that we ensure that we protect them from any crowd rising up against them. I think this is quite critical. We do not want to see loss of lives or people being targeted as a result of election cycles. So that's another area that we shouldn't miss out. Let us see how we can strengthen the process to ensure that our young Nigerians that we send out to different parts of the country to preside over election polls will be protected. The final point is that I expect that rather than give excuses, we are able to, within the time frame between now and the next election cycle, improve infrastructure to ensure that network coverage is actually better, that can serve the people. Yes, we have the data on ground that about 98% coverage, 2G at least network across the country. Can we see that work? I mean, I was quite taken aback to see the president talk about, technology not replacing people. Technology is not supposed to replace human beings. It's supposed to enhance the work of human beings. It's supposed to enhance and make the process more transparent and more viable. So what we are asking for is within the time frame, rather than give excuses. When he came into government, he had talked about the strengthening of the network areas, coverage areas. Can we see that work being done? Because what we don't want come election, now looking like January 2027, are excuses. We have seen the provisions of the law. We have seen the limitations of the law. We have heard the agitations of the people. All hope is not lost. We keep hope alive because at the end of the day, Nigeria must survive. What we want to see is that in this lifetime, Nigeria would be able to have free, fair, and credible elections. It has happened before. It can happen again if we have we have the political will to prosecute that. So I ask the question again, and I echo actually the question I was asked by President Dr. Abati earlier on. Will this administration be willing to leave a legacy in its final term of free, fair, and credible election? Nigerians are looking up to you.